Next, we have Betsy Loring with FAST Blackfeet. Blackfeet Nation Community Food Security and Food Sovereignty Assessment will be our next presentation.
Hello. I'm here today to share the great work that's being done by a group of volunteers who, recognizing the negative implications of living in a food desert, a place with limited and unreliable access to safe, healthy foods, decided to get organized and get to work on problem solving. In early 2016, the Food Access and Sustainability Team, or FAST Blackfeet, was formed. This group of community leaders, health professionals, educators, and concerned citizens of the Blackfeet Nation came together to identify and address issues of food security and food sovereignty. We began with an assessment. In May 2016, we completed a food sovereignty assessment through the First Nations Development Institute. By June, we had a PhD community nutrition student from the University of Tennessee leading the way. The end product is our community food security and food assessment. The CFSA acts as a guide to future endeavors. It is based on 6 components from the USDA's Community Food Security Assessment Toolkit and components of the First Nations Development Institute's Food Sovereignty Assessment Tool. I'm going to share some of the key details from each component. However, there is a wealth of valuable information within this assessment, and within the methodology, there was a lot of data gathering that was done. Here I have listed our primary sources in completing this assessment. The socio-demographic component looked at the community in comparison to Montana and the country. Overall, the community showed greater economic insecurity, with 37.1% living below the federal poverty line. Individuals living below the federal poverty line are more likely to experience food insecurity. This component also showed issues such as more use of federal assistance, a lack of health care coverage, greater unemployment, greater prevalence of premature death, lower birth rates, and generally poorer health-related outcomes in comparison to other populations. The profile of community food resources, developed through interviews with program directors and retail managers. There was 8 federal assistant programs, serving a large number of the community. However, most access is centered in Browning, leaving outlying communities more insecure. This component also revealed that of the 4 stores, 8 convenience stores, 3 seasonal, and 1 co-op, only 2 stores in Browning accepted WIC due to difficulties with state regulations. There are also only 2 emergency food locations, only in Browning. In the household food security component, the Map the Meal Gap methodology shows a food insecurity rate of 21%. Yet our data shows that number to be closer to 57% of households that are food insecure, 4.5 times the national average. The food resource and accessibility and community production information was gathered from 86 food-related establishments, resulting in a food access map. Anecdotal data shows that locations are interested in increasing local and traditional foods, but lack the resources to do this. For the food availability and affordability component, a validated tool was used to compare convenience and grocery stores on reservation and one off-reservation store. We found poor availability, poor quality, and higher pricing for healthy foods for Blackfeet residents. A 4-item food sovereignty survey provided data displayed with word clouds, larger words reflecting more frequent responses. We see that there might be value in more education about traditional foods as a part of a healthy diet. We also see people still using hunting and gathering practices. Our food sovereignty assessment shows that people do try to access locally produced foods. Barriers were reported as being prices, lack of money, lack of knowledge, limited producers, poor soil, limited hunting season, and transportation issues. In order to build better access, the community does show support for building farmers markets, food banks, and food co-ops, as well as a desire for gardens and education around food and food production, a positive indicator of a community ready for change. With this information, 9 recommendations for change were made. This is not our to-do list, but a guide for future work within the community. FAST has been focusing on some of these goals. The first one being disseminating the findings of the CFSA. With a small grant, the report was printed and distributed at a state and tribal level. This has given a voice to the issue of food insecurity in our community and has provided data that wasn't currently available on this issue for our demographic. It has also helped FAST and other agencies in their food sovereignty efforts. For instance, the CFSA's data has helped the tribe's agriculture and resource management planning group in securing funding for their food sovereignty efforts. The ARMP is a partner in food sovereignty, focusing on local food production, distribution, and access, with a focus on policy and planning. For FAST, we used the data and received a grant from First Nations towards the development of a food resource center that will serve as a hub of food access. The first phase is a food bank within the Medicine Bear Shelter, with educational programming second. Phase 3 and 4 of our larger plan includes a commercial kitchen that can act as a small business incubator and eventually a community cafe and co-op sales area so people can produce and sell local food goods, thereby building the local food economy and supporting a more food-secure community. Thank you.